So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Jon Powell is going to be running our workshop, Embrace Your Story, Embrace Your Brand. So I know I am excited. I work in the marketing end of the Launch Dayton platform. So I'm personally excited for this, and I hope you all are as well. We are recording the webinars. I'm going to ask everybody to mute while the presenter is talking, and then you'll see on the side in the participants panel, if you want to hop in, there's a way where you can raise your hand, and then we can unmute you to chat. There's also a text chat, so if you want to type questions in that way, we can do that as well if you don't want to be on the recording or anything like that. So I'm going to pass over those presenter privileges, and thank you, Jon, from Christopher and Mae, for running this session for us today, and I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Audrey, and thank you guys for attending today. First off, just wanted to thank LaunchPad for the opportunity to speak with you all. It's unfortunate we're not able to meet in person, but I'm still thankful for the opportunity. So like Audrey said, my name is Jon Powell. I'm the founder of Christopher Mae Design Company. We're a branding and marketing company here in Dayton with the focus of helping small and family-owned businesses really celebrate their story and help connect with their audience. And today I want to show and share with you a few tips on how to embrace your unique story and how it can fuel your brand and your marketing efforts. A few things about today. During this session, one of my goals is to create engagement and conversation among us. So I'll be asking some questions of you all, and don't be shy. Feel free to raise your hands or comment. I want to try to foster as much engagement as possible. Don't be afraid to chime in or raise your hand during the session. I want you guys to speak up as much as possible. Yeah, I'm completely fine with interruptions and things like that. So before we get into that, into the content, I really kind of wanted to hear from who's here with us and what led you guys to join us today. So I will start at the top of this list here with Dina.
Unmute myself there. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Well, I have a business idea that's crawling right now. It's called Hit a Snag, and basically I'm a parent advocate for special needs kids or caregivers of special needs kids. And the reason why I wanted to attend today is to get some ideas on how to establish myself in terms of a brand. I'm a parent, but no longer a parent. My kids are 19 years old. So I've done some research. So I'm at that point where I'm crawling. So I'll admit that I'm a crawler.
Gotcha.
And I think I met you, or at least heard you talk at the sessions that were in June. I think you attended. If not,
okay.
Your voice sounds familiar.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Dina. Mike, how about you?
Okay, caught me in mid move.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm still working as program manager, doing writing, mostly business documentation, some copywriting. Trying to move more into that, more copywriting, more business process documents, business plans, those kinds of things. Business startup. Also trying to work with the North Main Street Business Association, trying to get that going. And so that's what's swirling around my head while I'm in my off times from working.
Very cool. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mike. Patty, what about you?
I've created it's actually a patented new design in athletic outerwear pants that allows you to put them on and take them off in a matter of seconds over shoes and other clothing.
Wow.
So
I'm
it's
there.
kind
Oh, very cool. That's
it's
amazing.
kind of like a jacket for the lower half. And I launched, oh gosh, a year and a half ago. And I really believe I've got a really, really good product. I just have to figure out how to get it out there in the public and, tell more people about it. And also I've struggled a bit with who my target audience is.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Very cool. Well, congratulations on the launch. That's
Thank
no
you.
easy feat. So.
Thank you very much.
All right, Susan, what about you?
Oh, am I unmuted?
Yep, you're
Yep.
unmuted.
Okay, great. Well, I've worked in the past for a large digital marketing agency and had a lot of nationwide clients, and just recently have started my own local digital marketing agency, mostly geared toward social media engagement with small businesses. So that's kind of become my niche and my focus. Up to this point, I have basically been running on referrals. I mean, a lot of people just know me. So my first clients kind of, for lack of a better phrase, kind of fell in my lap, which is nice, and do have a lot of connections locally with small business owners. So, but I'm at the process now, or at the point now where I'm wanting to, instead of piggybacking off my old agency, I'm wanting to create my own brand, my own presence. And I loved the idea of embracing your story and embracing your brand. So just kind of here to soak up any kind of knowledge I can in that area. So
Awesome, very cool. Well, congratulations on taking the leap. It's no easy
you.
feat. So that's
it is
great to hear. Okay, awesome. And then Tamara, is that correct?
It's Tamara.
Tamara.
Yes.
So what brought you here today?
So I am a life coach, and I specifically focus on working with women and inspiring them to go after their dreams. And so I'm just trying to get a little bit more information, really just, to try and tell my story in a way that connects with people.
Okay. Very cool. All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for mentioning, your backgrounds and what got you started and what brought you here. It really helps me from an outcome perspective, kind of try to tailor some of this content to match those outcomes. So as we kind of go through this, if there's anything that you feel like you want to kind of drill down on or ask more questions about, feel free to speak up. We can do that either in the middle of this or afterwards. More than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So in terms of outcomes, I'm going to share with you the presentation deck for today. And really what I wanted to do was to just focus on outcomes first and foremost. So my outcomes for today for you all is to gain clarity on where to begin crafting your story, as well as understanding the value of your unique story. And then finally, to leave feeling energized and encouraged that you can start today telling that story in a way that creates value for you and leads you to your goals. So before we get into that, I just wanted to kind of get some clarifying terms out there and help kind of break down some of these terms that you hear often. So what is a story? There are many different types of stories out there. If we're talking about literature, there's nonfiction, fiction, different types of stories in that regard. But part of the reason why I started Christopher Mae about a year and a half ago is that I wanted to make much like much like Susan, I came from a bigger agency that had bigger clients, Fortune 500 clients, and I really wanted to bring the strategic initiatives and learnings that we worked out with those clients back down to the local level, and really help family-owned businesses and small businesses really tell their story and position those businesses for future success. And so when I hear storytelling, I really want to boil that down into its simplest term. So in a nutshell, a story is a series of related events communicated together to convey a message, or put simply, a depiction of a journey of how something came to be, as well as what is to be. So from a storytelling perspective, it's always really helpful and exciting to kind of tell, how did you get to this point today? What led you to this point? And then also acknowledging that the story's not over. It's a living, breathing thing that happens, all the time. So, and with the realization of that, there's this kind of notion of, okay, well, how do I kind of sift through all the things that are happening to me or affecting me, and kind of funnel that and weave that into a story that resonates. And so my answer to that is really just around positioning your brand. So that's where, from a business perspective, having a solid brand strategy comes into play. A brand strategy is really going to provide you with a lens through which to filter, some of the things that you're coming in contact with, or it's going to, be that North Star to kind of keep you on track in terms of your messaging or the types of emotion that you want to elicit from your audience. Just a show of hands, has anyone heard the terms branding and marketing used interchangeably and been super confused what the difference is between the two? Yeah. Okay. I see Audrey's hand up here. And so what I want to do is just kind of separate the differences between the two. So branding is really the way you represent yourself to your audience. It's that emotional, intangible thing that people can't really, touch or really see. It's really that emotional essence of what your brand is, as well as that pathway through which people understand what to expect from you. And then marketing is that process through which the brand is positioned to be discoverable by those who identify or connect with the brand. So to boil that down even further, branding is really your why. It's really, what gets you up in the morning, what keeps you going, what drives you, what are the things that you want to be remembered for as a brand. And then marketing is, understanding who is going to consume that content, who is going to be touched the most by your product or service, and then identifying where to connect with them, understanding where they are and how they consume information. One of the things that I tell a lot of clients is that you don't necessarily want to be everything and anything to people. So you don't need to be on every, and I know Susan can probably attest to this, but you don't need to be on every platform, right? You want to, really emphasize, the quality aspect versus quantity. Depending on your audience, they may not be on, Instagram or Twitter. So, you're spending all these hours trying to formulate content on these platforms, and, they're not there. So, to Susan's point, you go exactly where your audience is. And so that's really kind of like the boiled down differences between branding and marketing. So what is the value of having a unique story? So the value of having a unique story really allows you to cut through the noise of your market and establish a clear connection with your audience. Can you guys still see my screen? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. In a way, it really just simplifies your vision. So you'll hear a lot in business, in your business startup classes that you have a vision and a mission and all these things, but how do you really use those to create value, or how do you really use those to kind of just establish a relationship with your audience? And that really comes from building a really engaging emotional story around it. So it really simplifies your vision and creates a space for people to create that connection with your brand. So I have a couple of examples here. So this is very macro. I try to use brands that everyone kind of understands and sees or has seen. So if you think about Audi, for example, Audi is a well-known car company, and they have a brand story that they have dialed in and laser focused. And what I like about Audi, and I'll kind of talk about these differences. I'll go back to that point actually here in a minute. But in terms of Audi, you see this image of this guy sitting on this brick wall, in front of his car. And there's a list. This image alone is listing a lot of different things. So it's they're portraying themselves as high end, bold. I don't know if that if that brick wall is on the other side of it's a race car track or a freeway, but this guy could care less. So it's bold, it's exclusive, it's unapologetic. He is where he is. He's no one's going to tell him to get off that brick wall. And that's really the brand story that Audi has kind of portrayed throughout the years, right? So not everyone can afford or pull off an Audi, and that's intentional. They want a certain type of person to identify with their brand and to connect with their brand. A really interesting contrast to that is Toyota. So Toyota, from a price standpoint, it's pretty comparable, for some of their models to Audi, but you don't really think about that. There's a completely different brand story that they are kind of putting out there and portraying themselves as. So they want to be known as reliable and safe. Want to be known for being that family car, that car that you go to Florida with the kids, and then eventually you give your child that car when they turn they are of age to drive a car themselves. So that longevity is there. They want it to be fun and adventurous, to experience life with this car. Don't be afraid to take it off road on a dirty trail or what have you. It's for someone who is looking to really engage with life versus being a passerby. So, and the point I was going to get to before was that when Audi first came out, in the 90s, or not came out, but when, in the 90s, Audi had a very interesting perception in the market in terms of, their competitor at the time was Toyota. And then, they started to really kind of redefine themselves and really redefine that brand story and kind of position themselves as more of this elite or elegant brand that is very exclusive. I think of Kia. Kia is another model or brand right now that is in the middle of that. So I think some of you can recall a few years ago when you would see a Kia Optima. It was mid-range, even a cheaper option. All the kids in my school, when they first got their first cars, a lot of them were Kia Optimas. You know what I mean? And now, you Google or you look at a Kia Optima, it's a pretty pricey vehicle, and it's the quality has increased. So they, through the years, have started to kind of transition and reposition themselves as more of this elite, elegant brand themselves. And it takes time. It takes being intentional, understanding your audience, and understanding the audience that you want to go after, and then making the shift appropriately. So next, I want to get into how to really flesh out your story. So here are the story elements. First, start with you. What drives you? What do you stand for? What are the attributes that you want to be remembered for? Like I mentioned before, like these are the things that you really want to outline and identify in a clear and concise way, as these are going to be the foundational elements for your brand. What makes you different? What do people gain from interacting with you? What are the pain relievers that your brand provides to people? Things of that nature. Secondly, share the rain, not just the rainbow. Especially in social media, everyone wants to share the best moments of life, and everyone's life is the best that it could be, right? But that's not really reality, and so you want to create a story that's relatable. So at its core, every relatable story out there, shares the wins and the losses. You can't really appreciate joy without really understanding and experiencing pain. And so being able to take your audience through that journey helps deepen the relationship, and that correlates into value and creating not only a customer, but a friend of the brand. Next is be intentional. Don't just throw content out there for the sake of doing so. Think through what your outcomes are for people who consume or who interact or consume your content, and then understand what you want them to do afterwards, or how do you want to change their lives. Just articulating and understanding what comes after the consuming of your content really helps to kind of refine and establish a more concise brand story. And then also, finally, identify your audience. That's kind of getting in more into the marketing piece of it, but it does have legs from a branding standpoint in that, just understand, who's used or is engaging with your content. You don't necessarily need to have, all the data analytics, have Google, tied to your website, or have, it's best to have a business page on, your Facebook or your Instagram or things like that. But if you don't, just do an eye audit. If you have a brick and mortar store, or if you've interacted with people, in the past, 30 days, what do they look like? How old are they? What stage of life are they in? If you can tell, were they married? Were they single? Divorced? Do they have kids? Do they have younger kids, older kids? As granular as you can, identify, what are the things that, what are the characteristics of the audience or the people who are either buying from you or engaging with your content. And then what's more, really identify what product or service did they buy. Did they interact with a special sale, or did a special piece of clothing, or was it a special piece of content that really resonated with them? Really trying to identify those things really helps you kind of refine your story in a way that's intentional. And you can almost use different moments of your story intentionally to really garner that interest and deepen that relationship. So how to use your story. There's a lot of different ways that you can use your story. You can funnel it into an email campaign. You can, do a lot of social media content. You can even infuse it into your products themselves and make it a part of your offering. But what I really want to do is really leave you with a few different use cases that aren't necessarily a hard sell. So it's not about hitting people over the face with facts and figures. It's really about in this day and age, it's really about creating a relationship with your audience. With so much going on right now, especially with the pandemic, especially, people are vying, companies are vying for attention right now. And so what you want to do is just make sure that you are being as authentic as you can in providing the best content you can that really resonates with your brand. So first and foremost, you want to make your audience more than just customers. You want to actually create an ecosystem or a community. So that can be done through a couple of different ways. Creating special, groups, either online or in person, if you have the ability to really engage with you, so they can see you as a person or as a group of people, and not just a provider of a product or service. And also, deepening the relationship by understanding different ways that different things that they do to create value, or that they understand is valuable. So if you, let's see, so Patty, for example, if your audience is very active, if they have family members or young families, or have a diverse family, maybe there's ways to sponsor family events through different partnerships that could really associate you with being an active part of the family, not just selling clothing, if that makes any sense. So it's not necessarily doing a hard sell, like I mentioned. It's going past that to make your product or service, or make yourself a part of their family, a part of their everyday. Next, if you can, use your story to change the world. Is there something that your company stands for? Don't be afraid to lean into those values and manifest them in supporting, in a way, in which you support a cause or raise awareness for a particular issue. I think about Tom's, the shoe line, how they did a phenomenal job of explaining and communicating how they were able to give back to the world by consumers purchasing their product. And that really resonated with a lot of people. And that drove them to, invest in Tom's versus, another brand or another line for a long time. So that's a, thank you, Susan. Yeah, I actually love their story. They've got a phenomenal story. And so don't be afraid to lean into a cause that is near and dear to you. Again, it's about creating a relationship with your audience, creating a relationship with the people who consume your content or consume your product. Which leads me into don't be afraid to be human. Your story is yours. It's unique. It's not. It doesn't need to be a certain stepping off point in which you started the business, or had this thought of starting up a group or what have you. It could be a series of moments. It could be a series of consistent moments of searching that led you to where you are now. So don't be afraid to lean into that and share that it didn't come easy. It came with a lot of painful moments, but like I said before, it's in that pain that you understand, really appreciate and value the joy and the wins, and people really respect that. So don't shy away from that at all. Next, ask for feedback. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Instagram and other social media platforms have great tools that you can use for polling, things of that nature. Those are great ways to engage with your audience, and also just to validate if you're on the right track with your storytelling. Is it resonating? Are there things that you could be doing better? You want to position in a way that doesn't open up the floodgates for people to bash you or anything like that, but choose different ways to engage with your audience in a way that's, again, intentional and leads you to establishing value and establishing a relationship with your audience. And like I just said, establish value. So think past the immediate post, but create content that is valuable and real. You want to try to make sure that the content that you have out there has clear goals in mind, that that your audience understands and knows what you want them to do afterwards. So that could be in forms of CTAs or different imagery or links to additional content, things like that. So you want to make sure that things are clear and concise. And that's it. You guys have any questions?
I'm going to stop our recording. So just so you all know, you can feel free from here on to ask any questions, and it'll stay in confidence.